Wisconsin is going back to work.
I'm Steve Walders.
And I'm J.R. Ross.
This is Rewind, Wisconsinized summary of this week in the Capitol. J.R., it was a week ago that we said we didn't know what else would come out in additional John Doe documents. It's been a very busy and newsworthy week for news organizations such as yourselves. So let's talk about some of these elements here. I want to start with the first thing we learned from John Doe documents is how closely Walker asked to have third-party contributions go to the Wisconsin Club for Growth. Unlimited donations, sources of donations have to be disclosed. So let's just talk about that one first. Pretty significant, my friend?
And here's the best part of the entire story, or, I mean, if you're a political junkie, the document that we all seized upon to find these details wasn't supposed to be released in the first place. Right. The court somehow, accidentally, whatever, posted several documents that had been sealed that included these details. Details showing that Governor Walker closely worked with his folks to direct money to the Club for Growth. Now, Republicans have been insistent all week long, this is not illegal.
And the governor said that. This is not illegal.
Yeah, President Obama does it all the time for these super PACs that have emerged. They're always raising money for them, and that's totally fine. The question becomes, is there any point where Walker and his folks cross over from fundraising to coordination on expenditures for express advocacy? Remember, that's the magic words: vote for, vote against, support, those kinds of things.
And that issue was raised in other documents that showed some calls back and forth to national groups, right? Those the RGA,
excuse me, the RSLC. Now,
RSLC stands for
Republican State
Leadership
Committee. RSLC, yes.
Okay.
So here's the thing about those, though. It's one passage in a document, again, that wasn't supposed to be released, that says there were calls and some kind of coordination, but we don't know details. And that's the big question mark. Yes, there may have been some kind of talks, but what were they about? Were they about the recalls of senators or of Walker's recall? There may be a big difference between those two things, because it's a coordination about him. I mean, I think that might be a key legal question that has to be answered before you can think about anything about charges against Walker or his folks.
Okay, you and I have got more than 3 decades worth of experience in that building. Okay, almost closing on 4, given my age.
Yes.
Can we agree that governors have done this type of thing in the past, calling different groups and soliciting money, asking for donations?
Absolutely. I mean, now, we have not seen details of something like this before. Remember, the campaign finance dynamic has changed dramatically since even Jim Doyle's days.
Yes.
The rise of
Citizens
super PACs.
United and the McCutcheon ruling. I'm sorry.
Totally changed the game. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's changed the game. So it's a different ballgame than before. But governors have always, as far as I can tell, raised money from people who then turn around and have interest before the state. That's the way the game works often. They've all, though, held themselves above reproach that, look, I am so ethical, doesn't matter who I ask for money or how I raise it, it's not going to impact my decisions. And it goes back to that key question of, okay, did the money drive the decision, or is it because they are philosophically aligned in the first place that they're giving money and getting a favorable opinion, bill, whatever, because they're so, they believe the same thing.
And that's a perfect segue to, boy, we both learned last week that Gogebic Taconite donated $700,000 in 2011, and this is when Governor Walker and Republican senators were fighting off recalls, to groups helping them fight off recalls. That money, I just want to double check, that $700,000 went to Wisconsin Club for Growth. Do I have that right?
Club for Growth, yes.
Okay. Now, that was the first time that had been disclosed, and you have that gift in 2011, and then one of the first bills that passed in last session, 2013, was the new mining bill.
And one of the filings that kind of details that has the quote from prosecutors, a brief that at least creates the appearance of a problem, if you will.
Yes.
Here's the thing. Walker and Republicans have said, look, we were open about supporting the mining bill from day one. I mean, if you remember, that bill got hung up because of a couple senators, Republicans, who didn't like the way it looked. But Walker pushed for it right away. The people who were backing it, they never changed their position about it. So is that really corruption if you want a bill, you get a lot of money, and then that bill passes? That's the argument for Republicans. Like, look, from Democrats, it's like, look, this is unseemly. This is completely inappropriate.
Chris Larson, this is pay to play.
Yeah.
That's what he told me in an interview last week. Pay
Absolutely.
to play.
That's their point, pay to play. But is it pay to play when you were playing that way in the first place?
Governor said he did not know about the $700,000 Gogebic gift. So far, there's been no documents revealed showing that he did know about it.
There are tons of seriously, the Doe documents, there are all these tantalizing details, but we don't know the full story. We're getting this kind of bits and pieces from these documents. So you can see if you look at the Doe dump so far. Back in June, right? They believed he was in the middle of a criminal scheme, but oh, by the way, he wasn't the target when it was shut down. You're seeing now he's directing money to these third-party groups, but what else was going on? Was there any expenditures? We're not seeing the full picture yet, and I don't know if we ever will, unless there are charges brought against somebody and you see a document that lays out both sides of the coin.
Yes. Well, I want to ask you this question, and I read it, George Mitchell wrote a column on Wright, Wisconsin, and here's a question. With all these disclosures, haven't John Doe prosecutors won a victory in the court of public opinion by documenting the governor and these activities? Apart from any criminal trial charge, or haven't they won in the court of public opinion?
No. First, remember, in the first John Doe, that was going on while Walker fended off a recall. So he's beat it back before. The Marquette poll has shown that people who know about the Doe, and that's not universal, think it's mostly politics. But in talking to a lawyer this week who, quite frankly, thinks that prosecutors have no case, he was even telling me, look, they don't have a case, but this is damaging for Governor Walker because it's the least of these details. People in Wisconsin, we had this reputation as being a good government state for a long time, kind of pre-caucus scandal. Quite frankly, not well earned if you looked at what was really happening for years in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But there's perception of, we don't like money in politics, we think it's dirty, you know, we're clean. It's the perception that's a problem for Walker of, okay, wait, you're raising money for an outside group and they're turning around and helping you out. I don't know if I feel good about that as a voter, that I'm seeing those kinds of things. So that's the problem for Walker. He may have done nothing wrong, he may be completely ethical, but it's the perception that's a problem for him.
Were you surprised at his use of the W word, this is a witch hunt, JR?
No. I mean, he's kind of raised this prospect a little bit before, saying that, you know, two judges have knocked this down. There's nothing this whatsoever, you know. We've been through this before. We're the
nothing here to see.
No scrutinized governor. I mean, he's raised these
Judge
kind of
Randa,
issues.
Judge Peterson has said, no, nothing illegal.
Yeah, and if you look at, in talking to people, it seems like if you hate Walker, this inflames your passion. If you love Walker, it inflames your passion. This is looking like a base-on-base election. Governor Walker needs conservatives to be united behind him and motivate up the polls. By portraying themselves as being persecuted unfairly, it may help drive up the base's numbers and get them more active. If you look at that Marquette poll this week, hey, conservatives aren't as jazzed up right now as liberals. That's a problem for Walker, if that poll is true, and if that holds up for 2 more months. We're still 2 months out. Things can change dramatically. But Democrats were talking in 2010, oh, we've got time to make up the enthusiasm gap, and they didn't.
Before we get to Charles Franklin poll, one more item that was also in the news. Apparently, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corp., the State Journal reported, did a deal with Ashley Furniture that would bestow upon them $6 million worth of credits. But the fine print in the deal would allow Ashley to, over 3 or 4 years, cut their workforce in half. Now, that story was out there for maybe 2 news cycles when Ashley stepped forth and said, we're not going to cut any jobs here.
Yes.
Then, compounding that was a gift, the maximum gift, $10,000 each by 2 Ashley executives. Was that another bad day for the governor this week, JR?
It's the perception problem again. I mean, I've learned that anything in politics, you have to take more than 30 seconds to explain it, you're in trouble. And you can explain in a 30-second TV ad, they got this, they gave this. That's a bright line to people, even if it's not an appropriate line to draw. What Ashley's argued is, look, this is a unique deal. The $6 million is helping to redirect a creek. We're in a flood-prone area. We have to give this money to the city to do it. They're doing it. We're going to add jobs. That's a great explanation, but it takes too long to get to the point.
Former Democratic Rep Bobby Gronemus has been fighting with Ashley over this water issue she's been fighting with the state on behalf of Ashley. Well, she's no longer in the legislature. My point is this issue's been around 10, 12, 15 years.
And the donation, again, it's like it always is. Is it because of the credit or is it because that they agree? You know, I mean, I'm sure Ashley has other things they agree with Governor Walker on, but it's the perception of and the Greater Wisconsin Committee, actually the PAC Society, their ads are all about his cronies, his friends. They're getting money because the latest one out yesterday was he cut education funding more than any other governor in America and gave the money to his friends. That's the argument you're going to see from them between now and November, I'm sure.
Right. Now let's talk about that Charles Franklin and the MU poll. The third month in a row, or third poll in a row, the race for governor is a toss-up. The governor leads among registered voters. Burke leads 48-46 among likely voters. That just says it's a dead heat to me, again.
What's fascinating, though, is that typically in Wisconsin, you have a better reception for Democrats among registered voters and likely voters, especially in a midterm election. We have a bigger universe of Democratic voters in Wisconsin, and that's why. So what's happening that the likely voters are skewing a little more, or that Dems are more enthusiastic to vote in a midterm election in which Obama is a drag nationally, and you expect Republican turnout to be higher than it is in a presidential term. What's going on? Are conservatives either not jazzed up about Walker? Were they expecting more the last 2 years? Why is that happening? And I think I got a good answer so far about that.
I almost got more excited. I was more interested. Okay, it's again a dead heat between Walker and Burke, but this was the first head-to-head between Democrat Susan Happ and Brad Schimmel, Waukesha County DA for Attorney General. It was noteworthy to me that in both registered and likely voters, Happ has a 10 percentage point lead, with the caveat, many voters say they don't know either.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
A lot of it's probably driven by the fact that she was in a contested primary, getting a lot of attention for the weeks before this poll. Remember, it went in the field a week and 2 days after the primary. Happ had been up on the air for a solid week and a half before that, getting a lot of free press from the race coverage.
Momentum. So she had momentum.
Yes, and then you also look at numbers where they're largely unknown. Once they added in the party ID, that's when they added party ID to the question head-to-head. That probably helped push a little bit, Happ versus Schimmel. Okay. So, the familiarity, adding the party ID, that's probably a little bit of a measure of what's going on there.
Meanwhile, the Kenosha Casino and the Potawatomi, the Forest County Potawatomi tribe withholds $25 million from state government, which it's supposed to pay, and legally, contractually, has a legal obligation to pay, according to the governor and DOA, saying, we think we'd be hurt if you approve the Kenosha Casino. The Kenosha legislators and the mayor hold a news conference in Capitol saying, Governor, approve it today. This and 49% of those statewide in the Charles Franklin poll now approve the Kenosha Casino versus 35% that say no. A lot of dynamic synergism on that issue.
They're basically having a standoff right now. It's a high-stakes game of poker. And the Potawatomi are saying, okay, you think we're obligated to pay this money, right? But we're saying that you have committed an anticipatory violation of the compact. Therefore, we're off the hook for the money. And oh, by the way, here's this court opinion that we have saying we think we're on solid footing with holding the money. Now, what happens? DOA raised a prospect in an issue. Well, actually, the law firm hired by the state to go through this deal raised a prospect in a letter back to Potawatomi saying, by the way, if you don't pay up on this money, we think there's a violation here possibly. You could revert back to the 1998 compact. Right. What happens then? The Potawatomi lose their Las Vegas-style games, the table games, go back to 1,000 slots, I think it is. We don't want to do that, but if you do this, you're risking going back to a much different operation, what you have right now, which you would lose millions of dollars. The other thing is the state saying, okay, if we look at this deal right now, we could lose $100 million from the Potawatomi. We found a way of the Ho-Chunk, to go forward because of their compact. The compact, the Potawatomi is much less clear about how this goes forward. You could be talking losing $100-some million from these two tribes because the Ho-Chunk would be off the hook for their revenue sharing payment. We might have to be compensated for any losses beyond that payment. Right. So the Menominee tribe has to somehow come up with a way that they could actually offset both tribes' payments and make the state whole. That's a high bar to cross, and I'm not sure how they get there just yet.
Meanwhile, the Potawatomi just opened a brand new hotel, so you have all these amazing...
Very tall hotel.
A very tall hotel, yes. Was just in Milwaukee yesterday interviewing candidates. Well, the $25 million that the Potawatomi tribe, Forest County Potawatomi, is not paying adds to this week's numbers from the Department of Revenue. Tax collections in fiscal 2014, which ended on June 30th, $281 million less than anticipated. And we all know the reason why, because Governor Walker and GOP legislators enacted 3 tax cuts in the last 20 months.
And part of what's driving that, though, is so even with the impact of the tax cuts and the withholding table changes, we expected growth of 1%, $143 million.
Yes.
Actually came in about $139 million below what we collected the year before. Part of what's driving that, from what people tell me, is that the fiscal cliff, folks were cashing out capital gains ahead of that to try and avoid the higher taxes. Got a big boost. It kind of helped propel projections going forward in income taxes. that hasn't happened. So we're seeing this not just with us, but other states. That's helping drive down revenues. Now, the key point is the way the budget was built, we were supposed to end June 30th with a $659 million net surplus.
Yes.
Now, they spend almost all of that in the second year of the biennium, but there was a cushion to start.
Yes.
Unless revenues improve or they cut spending, we will end up in this budget in the hole. Now, by how much? Is it enough to create a budget repair bill? Walker's administration says not right now. We're in good shape. We can manage it. Now, by the way, there's also a hole in the Medicaid budget. That's $92 million a few months ago. They're going to manage that as well. It's a lot of managing to do. Even though it's a, $30 billion each year, or whatever, I can't remember, it's billion budget, that's still money to manage. So you guys' question is, why don't you manage it to begin with and spend less to start? But they have that cushion there. Can they pull that puppy in? We also won't see the full impact of the first year of the biennium until October. That's when we get the
reconciliation
of
how much
revenues
was spent
plus expenses.
Yes, by DOA.
And that will also capture then the tribal payments and what's going on there.
Meanwhile, Democrats like Jennifer Schilling, Senator Bob Jauch went on the offensive saying this is fiscal mismanagement. Peter Barca added that. Is the shortfall of $281 million, is that one more major new campaign issue now that we have only 2 months left in this campaign?
It was a campaign issue as soon as it came out. I mean, part of Walker's...
How big a one?
Well, part of the biggest issue is jobs. That's the number one thing. But part of Walker's argument for re-election is I took a $3.6 billion deficit, I turned it around, balanced the budget, oh, and by the way, I cut taxes dramatically on top of that. Now they're going to say, look, this guy didn't manage the budget very well. If he's ended up with a deficit, we're short. So it kind of knocks a little bit at the Walker argument of I'm a prudent steward of taxpayer dollars. Right. And that's what you're going to see.
And meanwhile, the photo ops Monday, here's the one you're not going to see. President Obama's coming for Labor Fest, coming to Milwaukee. But because it's an official White House visit, Democrat Mary Burke will not be on the podium. They will meet privately. I don't think you'll see a photo op at this point with both of them. What do you think?
Probably not, although her campaign and the DNC are saying that they're trying to get a campaign event with Obama before the election. The DNC spokesman told me that they have accepted the invitation to come back to Wisconsin to do one. They're working on the details. The Republicans are trying very hard to tie Obama and Burke together. Now, his numbers aren't great. If you look at the Marquette poll, depending on which numbers you want to use, registered voters, he was underwater by about 4 points for his job approval. Though his personal approval was still 50-46, I think it was, if I remember right numbers. So he's okay. He's not horrible. But, again, it motivates the base. Obama is somebody they don't like. So the base Republicans go, oh, she's, a third term of Jim Doyle, an extension of Barack Obama. I better get off my duff and get engaged here. So that's part of what's going on.
Well, but it intrigues me that Governor Walker has now rearranged his Monday schedule so he can do the handshake, the photo op with the president getting off of Air Force One, but we may not see on Monday a photo op with President Obama and Mary Burke. And
Burke's folks think the governor's a little bit too aggressive in trying to push this issue as being a problem when he said back in February or January when last time, it's my job as a governor to be there. Then initially said, well, I've got family plans, so I can't show up in Milwaukee.
Now, those have been changed.
Yes.
He will greet the president. And finally, we've been saying the last 2 weeks in the 17th Senate District, the Democratic primary, the winner is Ernie Whitwer, excuse me. But apparently not. Apparently it's Pat Baumhack. 110 missing votes in Monroe County.
If you look at the recount numbers going so far, big chunk was the 110 ballots. So all of a sudden, down in Monroe, 110 ballots that were cast on election night weren't in the bag when they opened it up to the recount. Right. Where'd they go? Nobody knows. The clerk told me that they searched City Hall now with the police chief and a detective. Can you imagine the three of them walking around City Hall? You seen any ballots?
Seen any votes?
Yeah. So they can't find these ballots. They say, okay, we're told to certify results without them. If they certify them, I think Ernie lost 40 votes and Pat lost 12. But when you're talking about a spread of 7 in Ernie's favor, that's enough to swing the tide by itself. Right. Now, what happens from here? One, we're still waiting for at least one county to come in. Yeah. As I've been looking at the numbers all week long, I've seen Pat pick up some votes and Ernie lose some. So even without the 110 that were lost, it looked like it had changed and maybe it was even without that. But again, it's a moving target because we're waiting for a county. So once that is certified, or once those last numbers come in, the GOB has 5 days to certify them. that's Ernie's window to go to court. I am sure he will go to court and argue that we have an original count from election night that shows what these 110 ballots happened. You should use those, not this count. Oh, by the way, down in Boston, there's a problem with the bag that was opened or was not sealed properly. It's going to go into court. The question is, how long does it drag out? Every day it drags out helps Howard Markline.
Howard Markline, the Republican candidate in the 17th
out there
Senate
campaigning
district.
on his own. Those guys are, fighting a legal
parade
battle.
opportunity. Yep.
He's out there. He's got this big war chest. Whoever comes out, they're going to dump on that person. By the way, Democrats say, well, we're raising money in the meantime. But, yeah, that's great. Your candidate is so locked into this. And the attention is not on Howard or the issues. It's about your legal battle down there. That race all of a sudden is just kind of slipping away a little bit.
Wow. Okay, there's no WisPolitics stock report because there's so much other news.
Back next week.
Weeks like this is why we do these jobs, right, JR?
Not much sleep, but a good time this week.
I'm Steve Walders.
And I'm JR Ross.
That's Rewind for August 29th.